So I've been using iPhones since the very beginning. I picked up that original iPhone back in 2007, and then of course, I have multiple iPhones today that I use pretty much on a daily basis. And I've actually been using the Fold 7 for about 3 weeks now at this point, and this is the first time I've really thought to myself that maybe the grass is greener on the other side for certain situations, because there are 5 use cases that I've learned that this Fold 7 can do and do them exceptionally well that the iPhone just can't do at all, and it's something that has really got me thinking. So let's talk about those 5 use cases and really talk about what the Fold 7 brings to the table and what it can do that iPhones just can't do. And of course, we'll talk about some of the ecosystem things that I have been missing out on. Let's get into it. But now, if you enjoy videos like this one where I compare the iPhones of the world to the Samsungs of the world, definitely consider subscribing to the channel because we have some more content like that coming and it helps motivate us to create that content. But now, let's talk about the first use case, which is that this thing is a multitasking beast. So I'm not really going to go over the design and the specs and things like that because again, at this point and at this price point, you're going to get the latest and greatest. Everything's going to be snappy, everything's going to work well. The hardware is pristine, they're using the best build quality and build materials. So overall, you're gonna get the best of the best for that $2,000 price point, and you can go look at a spec sheet if you wanna check that out. I wanna focus on the use cases and why the Fold 7 is starting to sway me a little bit, and I finally understand what this fold, or at least this form factor, is really for. So again, this is gonna be a very niche situation, and we're gonna be going really nuanced in these use cases, but the first one is gonna be the multitasking. I've never really understood the idea of what a mobile power user is or a smartphone power user is. At the end of the day, because I've been so used to just a regular candy bar design, an iPhone is an iPhone, it's a one-trick pony, you use one app at a time, and yes, you can switch between apps and multitask to an extent, and maybe copy stuff from one app then switch over to the other app, but there's a lot of friction in that process. For instance, I have a hobby when it comes to collecting Pokemon cards. So there's 3 different applications for this use case that I use on my iPhone, and I tend to actually not do it too much on my iPhone and gravitate to the iPad because switching between these applications over and over again is very annoying. So I always have this app called Collector up, which is basically like a stock portfolio but for Pokemon cards. Then I have eBay up to compare prices, and then also use things like Facebook Marketplace or Let Go or just another website to see if the price points that I'm looking at are fair value. And then switching between all 3 of those and then maybe even getting the calculator app out as a 4th application is very tedious on the iPhone, and it's something that I just tend to not do. If somebody reaches out to me on eBay or on Facebook, I end up just defaulting to my iPad or just checking on it the next day from my iPad. The Fold 7 has completely changed that situation. There is 0 friction. I can have 2, 3, 4 apps open at once to do everything that I need to do with that situation. So I have the Collector app on one side, and then I have eBay and then Facebook Marketplace on the right side to be able to kind of see exactly what's going on. And the process is very seamless, very easy to use, and it just works how you would want it to. It basically replaces the use case of the iPad in this instance when I am just kind of checking multiple things at once and being able to navigate those with 0 friction whatsoever. I just open up the Fold 7, set up my applications the way that I want it to, and then I'm able to check all the information that I need at a glance very easily and manage all that very simply. The iPhone just can't do that. There's way too much friction. The user experience is terrible when it comes to multitasking in that fashion, so the Fold 7 easily conquers that situation. And you can see how this would be beneficial in multiple use cases, not just in my niche Pokemon use case. If you're checking stock portfolios, if you're selling something else, if maybe you're running a small business, if you need to have multiple apps open at the same time. At first I thought it was a little gimmicky, like obviously I'm not going to be using YouTube and swiping through Twitter or YouTube and swiping through Instagram Reels at the same time, but for these kind of use cases where you're actually trying to get something done, it is super beneficial to have this iPad-like kind of interface right in the palm of your hand and in your pocket at all times. So next up is going to be Samsung DeX. Now when Apple introduced the USB-C port onto the iPhone, technically you could plug in your iPhone into an external monitor and it will mirror your display, but that's all it's going to do. It is mirroring your iPhone display, and Apple is still yet to give us some sort of computer-like interface from the iPhone to an external display, and Samsung DeX does that, right? So basically you plug in your Fold 7 into any monitor via the USB-C cable, and then you get this Samsung DeX experience. And what that is basically this kind of like netbook style, although it's getting powerful enough now to do a little bit more. But basically it just allows you to kind of have this email communication machine, this Slack machine, this ability to kind of web browse in a desktop-like environment, all being powered by your phone, by your Fold 7, and you can use the onboard keyboard, you can use your screen as a trackpad. Of course, you can also connect peripherals to it, so you can connect a Bluetooth keyboard, connect a Bluetooth mouse, and you pretty much just have Chrome OS running on any external display. It works with portable displays, it works with a big BenQ monitor. As long as it takes video in, you can plug in your Fold 7 to any external monitor and then kind of have this desktop-like experience with DeX, which I think is something that Apple should really bring. These phones and these smartphones are not getting powerful enough. Their chipsets are getting powerful enough to be able to run these kind of desktop light environments. So I think Apple should definitely take a page out of Samsung because this is super beneficial. The fact that I can just pull out my phone, plug it into a desk, plug it into whatever monitor I want, and then I have almost a full desktop experience, I think that's amazing. The third use case I'm going to bring up is going to be pretty much just reading, right? So reading, of course, you can do that on the iPhone. The iPhone has its own book application. You can get the Kindle app on your iPhone and things like that. But the experience, being able to just open up your Fold 7 and then treat it almost like an iPad and treat it like a physical book, because it even has that hinge in the middle, is something that I didn't really think I would want out of an iPhone. Something about reading a book on an iPhone has always seemed a little tedious to me, and it's really kind of just turned me off from the whole experience because it just feels like I'm reading a website. It feels like I'm reading something that isn't meant to be read on an iPhone versus on the inner display of the Samsung Galaxy Fold. It makes it a lot more appealing. It makes me want to actually read the book. It makes it, because again, it goes side by side. You have 2 pages. The UI feels like you're reading it the same way that you would read it on an iPad. Just the form factor alone just makes it a little bit more inviting to read an actual book as opposed to just listening to the book or as opposed to just reading it on your iPhone. On the iPhone, it just doesn't feel natural, versus on the Fold 7 it really does, and you really have to try it out to understand what I'm saying, and that's why I think a lot of people are kind of gravitating toward things like Audible, because you can still read and listen to your book on your iPhone, but reading it on your iPhone is still very tedious on the eyes, and you gotta keep scrolling or swiping through. Not a lot of text fits on the iPhone versus on the Fold 7. Everything fits as intended, and it just feels like you're actually reading a book, even though, of course, you're just using your Fold 7. And then you have all the cool camera tricks that come with this form factor. So of course, you're able to use your main 200 megapixel rear sensor as a selfie camera because you can open up the Fold 7, turn it around, turn on the viewfinder mode. You have one side showing you exactly what you're taking a picture of, and then the other side, of course, is using your main camera sensors. You don't have to rely on those tiny 12 megapixel or 50 megapixel internal selfie cameras. You can actually rely on the 200 megapixel shooter to take the best selfies possible. And then the form factor also allows for things like flex mode. So the flex mode allows you to just prop up your Fold 7 and make it feel like it's on a tripod, so you don't have to actually have somebody else to help you take a picture. And they have a bunch of optimized software experiences for that. So the form factor and the hinge itself just allows you to have a better overall experience when using the camera application. And there's a bunch of other tricks, for example, even in post editing, right? Whenever you're editing a photo on your iPhone through the Photos application, if you want to quickly glance at the photo that you're editing without any of the edits, you can have to hold down on the image and then it'll kind of go away and then it'll come back with all the edits that you did. Versus on Samsung, you can actually just see them side by side as you're editing it. So on the left-hand side, you have the unedited photo and you're constantly comparing it to the edited photo on the right-hand side as you're making changes in real time. So it just makes it, it's just a much more productive machine overall. And these are all things that I didn't really think I wanted out of the iPhone, but it has made my life that much easier, and I can see why the Fold form factor is so appealing. And then the last thing that I want to bring up is just the small things that the Samsung software and hardware combination allows that the iPhone, again, just doesn't do, or Apple doesn't allow for it. The first one being reverse wireless charging. So reverse wireless charging still works on the Fold 7, and it's something that, again, when you don't have it, you don't really miss it, but once you do have it, it's kind of one of those, it's kind of nice that you do, right? It does cap out at 4.5 watts of output. The Fold 7 needs to be at least 30% battery, but I actually was able to charge my wife's iPhone 16 a little bit when she was only at 2% battery. We got her to 18% battery and she was able to finish out her day, no problem. You can charge AirPods, you can charge Samsung Buds, of course. It is mostly meant for smaller devices and not really large iPhones and things like that. But in a pickle, it'll charge a secondary device. And then lastly, it's just the overall software on the inside. So when you do open it up, you do get this dock on the bottom that is treated very similarly to the iPad, or even, of course, like your Mac. We're able to drag apps and multitask very, very easily. And it's just so well optimized, especially when you are using them side by side, because you're just using 2 side-by-side applications. Overall, I do think that this kind of like iPad-like software or this tablet-like software on the inside screen is getting much better, because I heard in the beginning it wasn't fully optimized, but now there's 7 iterations in to the Galaxy Fold, and I do think they're in a good spot when it comes to optimizations and multitasking especially. So I've just been very impressed with my overall experience. The hardware's fantastic, the software's been really good. all the different use cases that I've been dealing with that just make me gravitate towards the Fold 7 a little bit more. And again, it's kind of similar to which camera is the best one that you have. Of course, a real point-and-shoot camera or a real DSLR is going to be better than your iPhone, than your Samsung, but most of the time people don't bring those in your pocket, so the best camera is always the one that you have around you. In a similar sense, when it comes to multitasking and productivity, it's going to be the best computer that you have in your pocket. So the iPhone, to a certain extent, can do a lot of things for you. You can run your businesses from it, you can check your credit card information, you can run your personal finances. But if I want to do something a little bit more serious, I go to my iPad Pro or to my Mac. And even though the iPad, even the iPad mini is relatively portable, it's not going to be as portable as a folding phone, and you get a lot of the experience that you would out of the iPad from the Fold 7, which again is something that I didn't think I would want, but now the fact that it's in my pocket, I miss it every single time that I don't bring it with me, or I miss the fact whenever I'm using my iPhone that I can't open it up to have two apps side by side. So that is what the sentiment is. The fact that this is now pocketable, the front of it when it is closed is the size of a regular iPhone or the size of a regular smartphone, and when you open it up, it's only 4 millimeters thick or a little bit more than 4 millimeters thick. It's absolutely amazing. Now again, it's not all perfect. For example, it is missing things like MagSafe. I don't really take this on runs with me because it feels too fragile and I'm afraid that the dampness is going to get into the display itself. Regular candy bar smartphones are still a lot more sturdy. If I drop the iPhone, I'm not going to be scared, while if I drop this Fold 7, I do think something bad could happen and I'm not going to test that here. And then of course you have the fragility of the inner display. I haven't had any issues with it, but I know people have in the past, and over time it's going to wear and tear way more than something like a solid glass on regular candy bar displays. So there's a lot of plus and minuses, but overall I do think that the pluses definitely outweigh the minuses when it comes to this form factor. And what the Fold 7 has taught me is just how much better it is to have a regular smartphone that can open up into a tablet, because you can be ultra productive. And another thing that it's taught me is that maybe the walled garden isn't everything it's touted out to be. Yes, sometimes I miss iMessage, but for the most part, I don't really, and it just has mostly to do with my overall ecosystem and how all my hardware is tied together in that ecosystem with continuity. But from a siloed perspective, I think I'm picking the Fold 7 over the iPhone, but what do you think? That'll do it for my Fold 7 review. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin. Always curious to have a discussion down below if you've ever tried a folding phone, what you think of it. Do you think Apple should make one? Do you think Apple's going to really capitalize on this movement of the folding phone and really give us something amazing? Always curious to know what you guys think, but if you want to watch more videos like this, check out one of these videos down below. And until next time, I'm Fernando. Peace, everyone. Kudos to Samsung. They really figured it out.